checking or having had checked all of the I'll be happy when boxes, and I felt unfulfilled, confused. It's like I don't know, I felt like I was living in some kind of the Truman Show or something on reflection. Actually, I'd been losing myself over a period of time by slowly abandoning myself. Not that I knew it at the time, but I was people pleasing. I was living life by other people's values. Hey, Christina here from Authentic Action Coaching. Welcome to the first episode of How Change Changes You. I wanted to kick off this podcast with my very own pivotal change story, really to help inspire, as we go along, meeting all of the many people that I will interview in each episode of this podcast to really plant some seeds of possibility in whatever change that you're currently facing, or maybe you'll face in the future. It is my mission, as I mentioned on the video, if you've caught it, on the welcome page on my website, authenticactioncoaching.com, where I explain really the inspiration behind this podcast. Really wanting it to be a resource for really, insightful, wisdom giving, an area where we can share our stories freely, and hopefully some of them will resonate with your life experience and help you understand how you're potentially perceiving a change that's happening in your life. As I've mentioned before, it's my mission to help empower you to see change in a whole different light. So you can actually be in the driving seat of your change as you navigate the highs, the lows, and everything in between that change really gives us. So with that, let's kick off with my very own change story. Full disclosure, I have got notes in front of me because there's some detail that I don't want to, miss out on. So I will be glancing down every so often. But ultimately, I would love for you to tune in to the change story that I'm about to share with you. I hope it resonates with whoever's listening, or it might plant a seed of some other reason why you've been drawn to listen to this podcast, particular episode anyway. Or if you've got a friend who is going through quite a tumultuous change. Mine very much has to do with relationship change. That was the catalyst for a lot of the other changes that went on after, which I'm going to share. But it also talks about getting to know yourself at a deeper level, and actually what that can bring. So that's really, my want behind sharing this story with you. It's also a pivotal part of why I came up with doing this podcast, because I know when I went through my dark night of the soul, which I'll share with you in a few moments, I had this insatiable appetite, this hunger, this thirst for knowledge, for wisdom, for insight, something that would help me shift out of this victimhood that I was experiencing, this nothingness. I was like free falling and didn't really know what to do, what to feel, what to think. It was new territory to me. So I was cracked open, you could firmly say. But actually that bore the beginning of me reperceiving myself and knowing that actually I was shifting from one particular identity into another. So it was a powerful moment looking back. Not pleasurable in many senses of the word, but actually necessary. And oh boy, did it help me grow personally and professionally, turns out. So without further ado, let's get going. My story starts in 2014. In essence, I had a 16-year relationship that came to an end. And if I was really honest with myself, for maybe 2 to 3 years leading up to that point, I was not happy in myself. There was something there was almost, the tap on the shoulder, the nudge from life telling me that I was, not living, I guess I hate the phrase, living my best life, but I wasn't ultimately satisfied or fulfilled, personally, professionally. And so it slowly started to eke away. And I think looking back, the universe, and I use the analogy of it kept throwing little pebbles at my window to get my attention, tap, tap, tap. And I noticed them, but I didn't really do anything about it because I didn't know it was trying to get my attention. I just thought, well, I'll just continue on, because the thought of changing anything actually just scared me, because I was too busy to actually look into what this tapping was telling me. And I think, and this is with the power of reflection, right, that the universe then upped the ante, and that tapping became louder bangs, became more repetitious, to the point where I believe the universe went, we're not getting through to, are we? She's not responding. So let's send her something that she can't ignore. And that was the end of my marriage, the end of my relationship after 16 years. So I had been with my partner from the age of 19. So I went to Huddersfield University and we got together then. We dated, then lived together. So that was like a 10-year period. And then we were married for 6 years. And, I, for all intents and purposes, a lot of those years were happy. A lot of those years were, filled full of fun and adventure, lots of learnings. I can safely say that I definitely worked at my relationship. But it became very evident that it was the end of the road for us. And my partner did the ending. I didn't. So I was safely to say cracked open. It made me question everything. I went into quite a dark place after it ended. It was the end of 2014. So it was nearer Christmas. And yeah, I found myself questioning everything. Questioning who I was, questioning what I wanted, questioning my identity. Who was I if I, wasn't a significant other, a wife, a partner? It was such a huge part of my life, and it had been for a considerable amount of time, that the thought of not being in partnership scared the hell out of me. And yeah, I really just started questioning everything, like, what's next? What's this telling me? So I was suddenly forced into this place of radical honesty with myself, where I had to accept exactly where I was and what I was going through. And this was a tough process. Friends rallied around me. I went up and stayed with my dad up here in the northeast of England. And I remember feeling like I was hibernating, like I just shut myself away from the world and really went to some quite dark places, honestly. And I had dipped in these places before. I'd felt grief before. In 2010, I lost my mum to brain cancer, which was a huge, there's another change story in itself that I could talk about. That was a massive pivotal change in my life, of how I saw life, how I saw death, and everything in between. But this was and produced a purging, I think, looking back. And I really revisited everything, and I thought, well, hold on, I've been following this blueprint of the I'll be happy when blueprint, right? The thing that you follow, the checklist, the happy when checklist of, you get an education, you get a job, you get promoted, you meet someone, you get engaged, you move into a house, you get married. Yeah. And so it goes on. And it's a very conventional way of figure all of this out and tick all of these boxes and you will be happy. And here I was checking, or having had checked all of the I'll be happy when boxes. And I felt unfulfilled, confused, and yeah, just just dissatisfied generally with my life. It's like I would just, I don't know, I felt like I was living in some kind of the Truman Show or something on reflection. And I remember thinking, why am I not happy? Something's wrong. Something's wrong with me. Oh my, and so I started to kind of worry, I guess, at this realization. So I later realized that actually I'd been losing myself over a period of time by slowly abandoning myself. Not that I knew it at the time, but I was people pleasing. I was living life by other people's values in certain places in my life. I was kind of living unconsciously. So kind of just going with the flow of life and just, obviously making some decisions, being, assertive in many areas, but fundamentally, I think I just lost touch with myself. And part of that was, climbing the corporate ladder in a job that I, would battle against, but I explained it away and said, oh, well, that's just the way life is. That's the way work is. It's meant to be this way. And naturally, you are surrounded by other people who are doing the same things you are, right? So your reference points are quite closed off. And so here I was at the end of my relationship. It was Christmas 2014, and I'd fallen into this deep questioning space, this dark night of the soul I describe, where everything just seemed to be breaking down, breaking away. There was a lot of tears, a lot of emotion, a lot of questioning, a lot of not knowing. And what came out of that was this, like I said, this insatiable need for me to be curious. So I started to gorge on TED Talks. I started to read whatever I could that was telling me and would explain to me what the hell was going on with me. And anything that fed me, anything that resonated, that gave me a sense of hope or inspiration or wisdom, I would just lap it up. And I remember at a certain point speaking with a friend who mentioned about projects abroad. And she sent me this link, and I remember staying up practically all night reading about it. And I had this kind of very awakening moment that flipped the switch. I had this kind of aha that we talk about. And it was this realization of I have nothing. I have nothing. I have nothing. And then realizing, hold on, I have nothing. I have freedom. I don't like the relationship I've been in. I don't like the person who I've become. I am no longer passionate about my job. I'm no longer wild about where I'm living. All of these things were like this mirror of, this is what's no longer serving me. And so this realization, this light flooded into this dark place. And I suddenly thought, I can do whatever I like. I have no dependence. I have savings. I don't like my job. I don't have a partner. I'm free. I'm free to do whatever I want to do. And then it suddenly clicked with me. You can. And that was such a profound moment for me. And I think it took me to fall into that dark night of the soul for me to realize, because I had to completely surrender everything that I was telling myself was true or right. And I had to face into the fact that, no, I fully have a choice here. And yeah, I started reading more stories about travel, about far-flung places, about people doing and living these unimaginable lives. These travel stories that just seemed to feed my soul, and just draw me in. It was almost like this inner knowing was pulling me towards this place of exploration. And I also remember at the time, and it's cliched to say, but I don't care, I watched Eat, Pray, Love. Liz Gilbert, Julia Roberts plays her in the film. And I watched it on repeat. I watched it so many times. And at the end of the film there, and the book, it's a book as well. It's a book first, then a film. There's this passage at the end that I'm going to share with you guys, because I would listen to it again and again. And actually, I wrote it in the front of my travel journal before I set up on my travels. So I'm going to share that with you before I go on with the rest of the story. It reads, "If you are brave enough to leave behind everything that is familiar and comforting and set out on a truth-seeking journey, if you are prepared to face and forgive some very difficult realities about yourself, then the truth will not be withheld from you." I can't tell you how many times I slowed the movie down to write it down, to reread it to myself. It was clear to me in that moment that the old me had to evolve, and that this was the universe, this was life inviting me, beckoning me to a new beginning. So yes, something had ended, but actually it created so much space for something new to come in my life. I noticed the similarities between the grieving process I had known, which is, denial that something is changing, the anger that something has changed, then the depression, the bargaining, the rationalizing, and then ultimately the acceptance that this has happened. You've lost something, be that a loved one or a relationship. Fact is, though, this grief process, it's not linear, therefore it's not step by step by step. It's sometimes a spiral, and you can go back and forth between these bouts of depression and anger. And even after you've accepted a first layer, you have echoes of it, thereafter, which I definitely know to be true for my journey, and things that I've grieved and still am grieving. But over time, grief begins to, you inhabit the grief. It doesn't inhabit you. And you just grow around it. This is what I've learned. So from this place of this realization, I then took the decision to really start to research and to travel. And I decided that I was going to use my savings to ultimately take a year out and travel. So at 35, I told myself I was too old to travel, that there would be just tons of just 18, 19, 20-year-olds out on the road, and I would just be so old in comparison, that how could I possibly do this? But I think I managed to override that, because I just thought, well, how do I know that that's true? I don't know that that's true. That's a story I'm telling myself. And besides, it was so obvious that this was the right path for me. I pushed through it. I managed to push through these limiting beliefs and think, well, that might be the case, but there again, it might not be the case. So I'm going to go anyway. So I did all of this research over Christmas into the new year and wrote my letter of resignation, took it in to work in the new year, had the conversation with my boss, who looked at me like I had three heads, because I just actually helped win quite a prestigious contract for the brand agency I was working for. And so he was just most bemused that I would be going. And I remember him saying, but what are you doing? What will you do when you come back? And I said, well, I don't know, but that's why I need to go. That's why I need to go and, go find myself. And I know that's cliched and cheesy to say, but it was true. I had lost the spark. I used to have this fire in my belly, and I just lost it. And I felt like I'd lost a part of myself. And this smack in the face that my relationship gave me, the end of my relationship gave me, was this catalyst of, who are you really? And are you going to answer to this call? And so I answered the call, and so fast forward, I hand my notice in. I have 3 months notice to work at work. And during that time, it is my plan, that becomes my deadline for I will start my journey April 2015. So I set about the exciting research and booking and getting your jabs and all of the things to begin to plot my journey. In fact, a good friend of mine came over to my apartment, I remember, with a map of the world under her arm. She blue tacked it to the wall and handed me this pen and just said, where do you want to go? And we had the best time just dotting different places, different countries, different cities, different areas, full of possibility. And don't get me wrong, it was still scary. It was still the unknown, but I just knew, there was a part of me that just knew this was the right thing to do. So I basically had planned to fly to Sri Lanka, which is the little island south of India. And I booked on to do a volunteer month for a sea turtle sanctuary. I thought, well, I don't know anything about turtles. I've never been to Sri Lanka before, but that felt like a good place to start. And I thought, well, if I start there, I've got a month where I've got a base, where I'm not just flinging myself into backpacking straight away. I have a purpose and some way of having some structure, because I knew that I would freak out having come from a place of structure, a very structured life, into free fall, into like nothingness. I thought, well, let's do that. So I did some research. It was the Koskoda sea turtle sanctuary along the east coast of Sri Lanka. And it was just the best. I had the best month ever. So I traveled during the weekends, and during the week, we would look after the turtles. We would learn all about them. There was like 10 other volunteers when I arrived. It was just fantastic to meet so many kindred spirits and loads of different people from all over the world, to share stories and exchange our life stories together and where we were going and what we were doing. So on from there, I then traveled to India for a month. That was a total assault on the senses. I was in India for just over a month, mainly traveling around Rajasthan and the north and over into the northwest and then back round again to Delhi. India, I experienced so much kindness in India. Talk about limiting stories. I remember before I went on my travels, a neighbor I was sharing with her what my plans were and where I was going to go. And when I mentioned India and that I was going to travel solo, she gasped and she said, oh, well, is that not dangerous? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, it's, you've got to take precautions, yes, but it's not, so dangerous, it's not war torn. And I just remember, I think I posed the question, also, how do you know it's dangerous? Have you been? And to which she said, well, no, but the news. And I said, oh, right. Okay. So just because the news says something, then that's right. Like I knew then that it wasn't, because a lot of the research I'd done and the people who I'd spoken to didn't share that same, scaremongering type perspective. And it was just interesting to me that she held this belief, yet had never been to this country. So on I went, had an amazing time in India. From there, traveled to Thailand, spent some time in Thailand, then back to Myanmar, spent a few weeks in Myanmar, which is formerly Burma. Beautiful. Oh, the countryside, the people, just different again. I had, by the way, booked a round the world ticket, and it allowed me to plan and plot all of the countries I was going to fly through. But what I did was I deliberately left space in between the locations. So I mainly traveled and stayed in hostels. So I got to know people that would stay in the hostels, and you naturally get to chat with people over breakfast, and then they would often share where they'd been, where they'd come from, or where they were going to. So you would find that you could respond to somebody's excitement and say, oh my, well, I have to go to this place that they've, mentioned to me. And then you found yourself thinking, well, there's so many opportunities here, so I'm going to go and make the most out of this. So I definitely did that. And the other thing I'll add at this point that came true for me, over breakfast when I was staying in these hostels, I would notice a regular pattern occur. And that was that I would have like an hour's conversation with somebody. And the last question, like the least important question, was, what's your name? Yeah, it would be, everything else would be asked, you know, their story behind why they were traveling, their experiences, what they'd found on the road, and all of this juicy stuff. And yeah, at the point, their name seemed like the least important question to ask. So that was usually, oh, by the way, what's your name? You know, but I connected with so many people on a real human level. And I suddenly became very, very aware of how formulaic my life had become working, and how it was so structured. And, you know, within even just one day of being on the road, I would have so many different experiences. It really helped me see life in a whole different way when you don't have the structure of work. And naturally, I know that we don't all have that luxury to do that. But it was definitely an experience that I can say that travel gave me, and it is the gift that keeps on giving when I think of all of the memories and all of the learnings I had through my travel experience. So from Southeast Asia, Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, all just such amazing, culturally rich, different countries. I made sure that whilst I traveled, I mixed up cities and being out in the sticks, out in the countryside. That was very important to me to get the contrast. I had long bus journeys, long train journeys, you know, in between my flights. And that was all part of the journey. That was all part of the adventure. And coming into contact with local people was really special. So on I went, landing in Australia, and I had this reverse culture shock. It was really strange, where I'd been living on a shoestring, and obviously the cost of living was very low. Suddenly landing in Sydney, the cost was considerably higher to both eat and to live. And suddenly you were forced back into this very westernized metropolitan city. And just knowing the difference of energy around how the pace of life had changed. So I remember feeling that very, very vividly. I then went on to New Zealand. So my sister lives in Auckland on the North Island of New Zealand. And I timed it, I planned it in a way that I could arrive to be there for the birth of my second niece, Zara. So I was going over to look after my my eldest niece, Stella, to allow my sister to fully focus on this new little baby that she was bringing into the world. So that was super special that I was there for the birth of Zara, and I got to connect with my sister that I am so close to, even though she's lived over the other side of the world since 2010. Thank God for technology that allows us still to connect and to have video chats and to be close to each other. It was around this time because I really stayed with her, and I was in a suburban house, you know, seeing other families, other conventional, you know, happiness setups, for want of a better term. So, you know, husband and wives, children, work, you know, all of the stuff that I had come away from, and I was questioning what I wanted. And I remember at that point, I had like a mid-travel meltdown. That's what we're calling it anyway. And I think I just began to question again, what am I doing? And I began to freak out that I didn't fundamentally have a plan when I arrived back in the UK. My sister, my lovely sister, thank goodness for her, grabbed me and said, Christina, you need to leave. I love you, but you need to leave. You can't give up now. Because I started applying for jobs. I was starting to freak out and think, oh, what am I doing? I need a plan. I need a plan. And over the past few months, I'd let go of needing a plan. I've coined the phrase since, this framework within which to play. So I've noticed about myself that I do need some kind of structure. I'm Virgoing. So I do like a to-do list. I do like some form of structure, but I also feel very trapped by too much structure. So I've got to have a sense of freedom and space. Otherwise, I don't do well. And I think the travel experience more showed me my free spirit that I had been forcing to be smaller than she was. And so this was my learning about myself through this journey. So my sister administered a loving truth bitch slap to me. This is something that I've coined a phrase on as well, when somebody mirrors back to you and sees strength in you that you don't yet see in yourself. That's what she did for me. And that's ironically now what I do for a lot of my coaching clients. I see their potential. I see the strength that lies within them, and I mirror that back. Now, she rightly pointed out that I may never get this chance to travel so freely again. So the last leg of my trip from New Zealand was to fly to South America and go through South America to then land in Brazil as my last stop before returning to the UK. So I heeded my sister's loving truth bitch slap. And that night I booked my tickets for Chile. So I flew to Santiago in Chile and began to map out my journey of South America and rebuild and re-come off the back of everything that I'd gone through and experienced thus far in my travel adventure. So from Chile, I crossed the border into Peru. I knew that I wanted to go to Machu Picchu because obviously it's one of the 7 wonders of the world. And I'd seen so many images that I just thought I just need to experience this place. And the energy around it was just so powerful. It was a truly breathtaking moment when I got to Aguas Calientes, I think, the village that you go to just before getting up to Machu Picchu. Yeah, truly mesmerizing. It is also interesting, I'll say, that a lot of the places, so the Taj Mahal I saw in India, and Iguazu Falls, which is another wonder of the world that I saw in South America. It's funny that seeing the images of the 7 wonders, it almost sets an expectation. So then you weirdly have this disappointment, this feeling of like, oh, I thought it would be this, or I thought it would be that. My more powerful moments were were unexpected. Turning the corner, I remember I was in India, North India, in McLeod Ganj, where the Dalai Lama lives. And I remember traipsing up this hill with my backpack on. I'd just got off the bus and I just turned and you could just see the Himalayas from this vantage point. And I just remember being absolutely breathless. One through walking up the hill, but the other, the view was so epic. And I have countless other memories of feeling that way, feeling really connected with where I was and just awe-inspired. And I would say that very few had to do with the 7 wonders of the world, you know, where you'd expect them to happen. It was more the unexpected where I definitely witnessed that. So to draw all of this together, I also wanted to share another quote with you, actually, and one that I found on my insatiable want for something new, you know, and the travel piece. I came across a quote from David Bowie, and I love David Bowie anyway for his creativity and his fearlessness, his courageous creativity. He said, and I quote, "I don't know where I'm going from here, but I promise you it won't be boring." And I love that quote so much because it gave me that boost, that injection of adventure, and actually seeing this scary unknown that I was facing before I set off. And I thought about it often when I landed in each new airport, because I would be scared all over again. And then it was back to, yeah, but look at all of the fantastic adventures that you've had. You know, what's going to happen unfold next? And then that just ignited this insatiable curiosity and excitement of possibility of what was around the corner. And that just gave me such huge boost. So thank you, David Bowie, for sharing that, because it definitely held true. So I'm going to draw this to a close, and just by sharing with you what I learned about myself during this huge change. Well, I learned that change is good and necessary. I also learned that rejection can also be redirection. That when someone or something doesn't choose you, it doesn't mean the end. It just means that that's not for you. And to accept that you may really, really want this thing, but life may have other plans for you, and to trust in life. Because I've also learned that life happens for you, not to you. It happens through you. And it's how you meet life and how you choose to perceive what's going on that makes the difference. So if you don't get something, or if you see a breakup as being rejection and you take that personally and you make that about you, then you're missing the point of the change. To see rejection as redirection is definitely more empowering. I also learned that breaking up can also mean breaking free. That's huge. That the I'll be happy when blueprint that I was chasing, that I was shoulding all over myself, just didn't fit me, and that was okay. I had over time lost touch with myself, and I realized that I was going through the motions, and ultimately I was abandoning myself because I was seeing things that other people had, comparing myself to others, and almost seeing other goals that people were working towards, and fooling myself to think that I should also be going after those goals, but never really truly deeply checking in with myself. So this was definitely a call to do that, to get myself to know myself at a deeper level. That's for sure. I'm very much more aware of when I'm abandoning myself, and by that I mean not meeting my own needs at a deep level, and prioritizing other people's needs over my own. People pleasing. I call myself a recovering people pleaser. It's default in me, so I've got to become aware when I'm doing it, so I can ask myself some questions to say, well, just because you should, Christina, doesn't mean that you have to, or doesn't, just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's the phrase. I didn't want to feel like I was going to just sleepwalk through my life like I had been. I also learned that there's a whole big world out there full of people that are living in so many different ways outside of the norm, outside of what you perceive that normality to be. I'll also add, at this point, I came across a lady in South America, in Peru. She was American. She was in her 50s, and she called herself the wandering waitress. That's what she called herself. And she decided just that she'd had a grown-up daughter, she was divorced, she had some savings, and she just thought, yeah, I could just live my life quietly, just out where I am. But she yearned for adventure, and she had the means to do it. So off she went. And I just found that so inspiring. I just thought, well, why the hell not, right? I also learned that sometimes good things fall apart, so better things fall together. That was a huge one. That what you resist will persist. The universe will keep, tapping your window, and it will get louder and more persistent because it's trying to get your attention. This is what I found to be true. I've also learned that when people treat you badly, listen to that, look to that, because we teach people how to treat us with our lack of boundaries or our unclear standards. And so if we tolerate and rationalize away people's bad behavior, then go figure, you will land in resentment, and it will weather you, and it will move you away from yourself. That was definitely my experience. And ultimately, painful endings can be the start of bright new beginnings. And so I really want to impress that upon you, because that's what I ultimately learned. What did this particular change strengthen in me? Well, the travel element instilled my faith in human nature, 100%. I met so many beautiful souls on my journey, on my trip. And I saw such kindness. People who I still contact and keep in touch with now, 7 years on. Travel is the gift that keeps on giving. For me, I have so many cherished memories and images, and those relationships of people who I met that I will never forget meeting. The other quote, you'll notice a theme here. I love a quote. When you think about strengthening, if you move towards pain and really confront it, it will create strength and resilience in you. And the quote I came across to illustrate this was, "The treasure you seek is in the cave you fear to enter." So that's Joseph Campbell said that, which is in his story of the hero's journey. And it just really called to me, because I just thought, whatever is hurting, if we constantly hide from it, we'll never seek the treasure that life's trying to deliver us. And so actually, if we go towards rather than run away, then you'll find it. It's back to that truth-seeking journey that I mentioned with Liz Gilbert and Eat, Pray, Love. It's to go into the abyss, go into the unknown, and learn about yourself, and learn and be curious, compassionately curious with what's going on. What strengthened in me was I'm so much more courageous than I gave myself credit for. I'm more resourceful, more determined, and resilient. I've, since my travel, I remind myself of this fact that you did that. You chose to go and to confront something that was way out of my comfort zone. But I survived it, and that's given me the strength to try other things and get out my comfort zone more times since then, like starting my own business, for example. It also strengthened in me the realization that I love to laugh, and I am playful, and some of my core values now that I live by are fun and adventure. If it's not fun and it's not adventurous, then I'm going to have little energy around it. It's got to have those components, those ingredients of fun and adventure for me. I love to dance. I go to my happy place when I dance. That was a reminder, and that strengthened that realization in me that needs to be a regular part of my life to feel fulfilled. I love to connect with people. Connection is another really core value of mine, to have those deep conversations and learn about stories. And so it strengthened that knowing about myself that I needed that connection. It strengthened my trust in myself and trust in life, that it's trying to teach me something if I'm open to listen. And if I'm closed to listen, I might very well miss the lesson, and I might pay for it afterwards. So I'm very much more open and curious now. It also strengthened the knowledge that the rule is there are no rules, only the ones you make for yourself. So finally, what has this shaped? How has this shaped me to who I am today? Countless ways. It shaped me in so many ways. It's made me appreciate life more. It's made me really look at myself in a deeper level. Years later, when I retrained in coaching, a big element that informed what I wanted to create for myself for the future was the freedom to travel whenever I wanted, and to find work where I didn't need to be in a specific building or a specific location, that I could be free, but I could also serve the other parts of me that need nourishing. So things like fun and adventure, like connection, being authentic, right? That's where authentic action coaching came from, because I realized through exploring my values, what I care about, the things that matter to me, that are non-negotiable in my life, it gave me real clarity that, okay, when I align my decisions, the way I show up, the choices I make, when I align to things that I care about and take action based on those things that I care about, then I can access flow state. I can access a lot more feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction, like deep levels. I'm talking of fulfillment and satisfaction, deeper than I've ever known. So when I was looking for a name, authentic action means to be authentic to yourself, to honor and move in alignment with self. And I think we don't always do that naturally, and it takes a few bumps along the way to have the realization of who we are and what we're here to do. And that is a ever-changing, ever-unfolding journey. How else has it shaped me? I'm definitely more intuitive. I'm more open. I'm less, and I would say less, but I still am in my head. Previously, I was a bit of a ruminator. I would overanalyze things. Now I'm a lot more trusting. I'm in a lot more in tune with my instinct, my intuition, my gut reaction, and my emotional state as well. I trust a lot more about how I feel about a situation, not just if it makes sense. What else has shaped in me? I guess to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I now have learned to sit in harder emotions, and that's something that actually I want to normalize within authentic action coaching, help people lean into the icky stuff and know that it's okay to not feel okay. And it's actually a necessary part of our emotional well-being, to allow the dark, to allow the light to happen too, and that both are needed equally. The other thing that shaped me is the realization that actually I don't have to fit in to any group, that I need to fit into myself. I need to belong to me. I still love to solo travel when I can. Obviously, COVID's been an interesting stop to that. And I actually love to spend time on my own. So actually the isolating parts of lockdowns hasn't really fazed me too much, because I've seen the power in it. I've seen the wealth of going within has given me. So yeah, in summary, I hope that's planted some seeds. I hope that's, if you are a fellow traveler, or maybe you've not really done any traveling, there's still time. My time came at 35. I'd holidayed before that, but not really traveled in the way in which I traveled when I was 35. And if you take one nugget away from what I've shared with you, I want you to take away that change is good, and that we are constantly changing. On a cellular level, our cells are constantly renewing, our shedding of our skin, or molecules within us. We are energetic beings, right, made of trillions of tiny cells, all vibrating in different frequencies. And so everything that's happening around us, within us, we're in a constant state of change. And it's to embrace that and know that you get to choose which lens you're looking at. What's the story you're telling yourself about the change that you're going through? Are you going to tell yourself that you are the victim of that change, or are you going to see the potential and the possibility that will come out of that change? It's really difficult in the moment to do that, I know, because when I reflect back of how I felt when the end of my relationship happened, I felt like the end had come. I really felt very, very low for some time. But I came out the other side, and I began to really take the time to assess what this was teaching me, and to appreciate what was unfolding, and that it was all happening for my greatest good. So yeah, I would love to know your thoughts, any key takeaways, anything that you heard that particularly resonated. I'd love to know. If you enjoyed this story, I would love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, or to put a comment telling me, sharing is caring. If you're listening to this on the podcast, do give it a review and a rating. If you think this story would help somebody going through a breakup or a change, or someone who loves travel, or someone who hasn't traveled that would love to travel, any of those things, I'd love for you to share it with them. Like I say, it's my mission with this podcast to help empower people look at change in a whole new way, to see it as a place filled full of possibility and potential to evolve and grow in this thing we call life. So thanks again. And I will look forward to reading all of your comments.